Okay, now I was told to start, all right? So we're going to start now, second session. Okay, now the first session you heard was the just introduction to Participatory Action Research. So now I'm going to talk about some theory and philosophy that we have seen involving in PAR. But what I want to say here is that from my own writing and from reading and so on, people tend to talk about Paulo Freire's philosophy or work mainly. But now we start to see some feminist researchers that start to critique Freire's theories, and so I'm going to involve in that. But as if you have actually read the lectures notes, you see that I actually proposed a few more things, and some of these things quite interesting. They are theories that people have used in other areas, but I think that they are really important or relevant to PAR. So that's what I'm doing. Okay, so you see some sort of, I don't know, you might say that weird theories, but there are some of the things that I think is important anyway. All right, so we're going to go through some theories here. Now, the reason that I bring the theory in because, I did touch on quickly earlier on, I said, in doing any piece of research, and certainly for qualitative research inquiry, we need to have some sort of theoretical or methodological framework because it will make our project a lot stronger. People can't ask too many questions when you do have some theories that frame your research. So therefore, I always need to talk about this sort of thing. So, all right, so that's what we're going to do now. Okay, so repeat a little bit about this morning when we talk about, the first session, we talk about PAR project. Okay, it actually situated within the theories that Paulo Freire has developed, but there are actually a few other things. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So the original ideas, come from Paulo Freire, who was a Brazilian educator and also a philosopher. But there are other things as well. So what I'm saying is that depending on your research standpoints, you can actually make use of some of these theories in your research. So up to you, which one is better for you, situated, that can be situated within your own research. Okay, now the first one is the philosopher or a theoretical framework set out by Freire. Okay, and as I said this morning, the main aim is to lead to a more just society through transformative social change. So that's what he proposed, that if we want to see a more equitable society, a more just society, that people, that we can leave no one behind. Some people use that word, that sort of thing. Then we need some social change that happen in the society. So that's what he said. Okay, so according to Freire, he said, PAR actually, is based on the cultivation of this word, conscientization. I have problem pronouncing that, but I will use it. Critical consciousness. Okay, so it's based on the cultivation of critical consciousness among oppressed people, among people who are poor and so on that we talked about this morning. So we need to be conscious about things that happen to our life, why we are poor, why we are oppressed, why we live these sort of stigmatized illnesses. We have to be consciousness of that. So Freire think that that's what we have to get to. So PAR, as when we talk about theoretical framework, it links the process of knowing to learning and action. Okay, so from the knowing, it will lead to some sort of action that we can do. Okay, or what we can do in order to improve our life. So learning and then action. So this is the book that I mentioned this morning. He wrote and published in 1970, but then there might be other versions, like different years too. It's the Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Now, in his book, Freire argues that individuals link knowing and learning through a continuing cycle of action and reflection. Okay, so a cycle of action and reflection, that means that we need to reflect why we are poor, then action, what can we do, and then come back to think about that, has that improved our life? If not, then what can we do? So it's like a cycle of things that we have to go through. And now, from this cycle of action and reflection, it will lead to this critical awareness about the world in which people live. Like we are living in poverty. Why? That sort of thing, it will lead to that, okay? Is what makes us continue to be poor like this? So critical awareness of things that happen. Okay, now, when he wrote this Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Freire actually criticized general practice of education. He said most education, and in Brazil in particular, is about rote learning. That means you just learn about these things, but then how do we remember that? Can we actually use that? He said it doesn't. In education, it has to be something that people realize, that people know what actually happened, and that when that can lead to the action that can transform their life. So not just sitting in the room and learn about things. And I will give you the example of in health promotion a little bit later on. But he said that that's something like that. It keeps people oppressed. That's what he said. By learning about like you have to learn about ABC. You have to learn about what make you healthy, that sort of thing. But it doesn't lead to anything, and people forget things like that. And sometimes it doesn't suit their living situation. ขอบคุณค่ะจ๋า Thank you very much. And so, but people really have to know exactly what is happening. So that's what he means by critical consciousness. They have to really know, not just listening. Okay, so Freire proposed things like that. And because of the critical consciousness or the thing that they realize, the thing like what makes them poor, that sort of thing, of course it can help people. So that one of the main theory that the Freire has written. So for him, he strongly encourages people or us to realize that as human beings, okay, we are fundamentally responsible for making and transforming our own situation and realities. We have to realize that we have our own responsibility to realize things like that, because no one can help us, no one can change our life, but we have to do it ourselves. So he actually make people to realize that why we are poor, for example, coming back to poverty again. And he encourages people, and here he used the word oppressed people. That means they are so poor that they are oppressed by society, to undertake research on how their meaning and their effects have worked or could work differently in diverse social and political contents. So he said he think that we have to do something. Like why we are poor, why we continue to be that poor, that sort of thing. Think about it. Okay, like that sort of thing. So he talked about that sort of thing, like as the research. Think that meaning to those people. He believes that through this activity, like their own research, that sort of thing, it will help oppressed people to have more control of their lives, and then to use them to change the economic, material, and ideological condition of their realities. Like why we continue to be poor. Okay, by the research, we know that because we lack work, we lack job. In our local community, there's no opportunity for us to work. If we are farmers, we continue to lose money, or our orchard or our farm doesn't make money. Why? That sort of thing. And what can be done? And that's what he meant here. Okay, so in his study, in his own original ideas about the education anyway, that people are illiterate, people don't know anything, that sort of thing. So that I just give you a few examples that Freire believe that by knowing things like that, it can change people's life. So in his literacy program, okay, that look at oppressed people's conscientization could be cultivated through his education. He said then people then critical consciousness about why they don't know about things, why they're illiterate, that sort of thing. It happened. So people need to know that. And he encourages oppressed people to engage in praxis or critical reflection which are connected to political movement in the real world. So in his case, education, why we are illiterate, that sort of thing, he makes people think that, what happened? The government did not provide enough education within the area, or the education doesn't suit them, that sort of thing. So I have watched some of the video that, talk about Freire and things like that, and I can see that he makes people think about so many things that can improve their education. So for his theories or philosophy, that's what he does. He encourages people to realize about their lives and then do something to change their life. So we imagine that by using Freire's theories in education to apply to other health issues, other social issues, and you can actually adopt that. And I did give you some examples like living in poverty, living with HIV, or becoming homeless, okay, becoming a sex worker, and so on. So these are the original idea is about. So still within him, okay, through critical consciousness and praxis, then we or people are able to improve the condition of our situation. Okay, now this bit here, when we are able to improve our condition, he said that means human agency. Human agency would be powerful enough to make it possible for us to change our own self and situation for the better. Okay, so he said that by knowing that these are our problem, what can be done, that sort of thing, then we have our own human agency, and then we will find ways that we can improve ourselves in that sense. I'll give you one quick example here. This is my research in Thailand with HIV research, women living with HIV that I did in Thailand. Now, you know that, okay, I'm sure that you know that HIV AIDS still stigmatized illness or condition, and in many parts of the world, of course in Thailand as well. So of course women are discriminated against, women are treated badly, women are socially excluded, and so on. Now of course women have to live with this sort of thing in their everyday life. People gossip about them, people sack them from work. Even family members don't want them to be in the house, don't use the same utensil, and so on. So stigma, discrimination are the main part of HIV positive women in Thailand. That's my research, okay? Anyway, the women have to live with these things every day, but then they also have their own human agency here. They find ways that they can live with their stigmatized condition. Now, what did women do? Okay, one of the things is that to see their HIV as a positive part of their life. Because I'm living with HIV, therefore, what can I do? Even I have been sacked from work, that sort of thing. I do something else. Okay, so they find ways that they can deal with that. And one of the things that I think is quite good is that in Thailand, there have been what we call the support groups. Okay, support group in Thailand to help people living with HIV. So a lot of women in my study actually join those groups, and we call HIV support groups, and there are different names, that sort of thing. Some got quite good metaphor, like living with hope or something like that. So the group that call living with hope will come together, and they will have health education. They sometimes do the yoga together. Sometimes they do the hair cutting, and so on. Women feel empowered by being part of that support group. And therefore, they have what I call here human agency to deal with their stigmatized condition. So that I adopt Freire thing into my HIV thing, that you can see that, of course, people live with the oppressed situation in their everyday life. Okay, here is about living with stigmatized illnesses, but then they do have human agency that can help themselves to live with HIV. Okay, so, and there are other things like using religion, Buddhism, to help them to deal with things. Now, many of you would know that we believe in karma, karma, yeah? You're doing good thing, then good thing will come back to you, that sort of thing. And there are ways that we can do good things, like helping our parents, doing things in the temples, and so on. Now, that good karma, that sort of thing, one day good things will come back to us. So maybe not this life, but when we are born again, we will be born into a better life, and so on. So these are the things that people use to deal with their oppressive life. And can you see that it's situated well in Freire's philosophy or theory here. So I'll give you one example for my own project. So here we are that he said that by knowing about things that sort of thing, critical consciousness and praxis, then people have human agency. And this can help people to deal with their oppressed situation. So I think that that's enough, okay? One more thing that I want to say is that in order to make people realize about their own situation, it has to happen through dialogue. And dialogue here is about talk, about discussion. Okay, so talking, okay, is the way that we can share with other people. So we have to have some sort of collective action there. That means talk between group, talk with other people, so that we know that this is my problem, this is your problem, that what can we do. So collectiveness or collection of people, that sort of thing, will help people to deal with more. And this, the collective action and reflection through dialogue actually is what PAR is about. Okay, so by sharing with other people, by sharing the knowledge and so on, what can be done, that sort of thing, it helps us to be able to deal with things better. So PAR is not just about one person in a way, but it's like a collective enterprise, so with other people. So, but then we have to talk, we have to tell the stories, and that part of that, what Freire has. Okay, now this is the example that I took from one of the writing. This book was published in 1996, but I find that the book is very, very useful for PAR research. So Decolonizing and Martin actually provide a very, very good example of the application of Freire theory in health. So this is what they say, okay? Is that a conventional didactic approach in health education that set out to teach people about hygiene and nutrition. So, we said health promotion, we provide health education about hygiene and nutrition, that sort of thing. But they said that has failed to allow people to, for example, critically examine the reasons for there not being enough water or food, and then to identify ways in which political, social, and personal action can change this situation. So that's what he said, like with the good intention, health promoter provide health education, health promotion program, that you have to take this, you have to do that, and so on. But is that suitable for people within that particular political situation, or the social condition, or even personal condition? Maybe not. Okay, no wonder why so many health education or health promotion programs fail, because it doesn't suit local people. Okay, although we have very good intention of provide health education, but no, it's not. So through PAR, then we know, like what can we do in order to reach people, for people to actually take action. So the example of the Ebola and maternity services there in Liberia that I showed you this morning is a good example there. And I have given you the example from my HIV project. Although my project wasn't PAR, it was an ethnographic study, okay? But it got that component that we involve people, that sort of thing. So that's the example from in health. Okay, I link it to health so you can see a little bit better. Okay, now, a little bit of video, is that all right? Now, I want you to see this, okay, is the seeing through Paulo's glasses. So it talks about political clarity and courage and humility. I choose this one instead of this one because I think it's more relevant. Now I do have two set up the or three set of slides, but I won't show this one. Okay, I showed the first one. Now these two you can watch it. You know, you have got the thing on your thing. You just do that. It's just YouTube that I downloaded from the internet. This one talk about the 4 steps to liberation. So this one in particular is about how to make people conscious about their situation and then lead to empowerment later on. And here someone or even Paulo himself talk about what he did. So I won't show this one, but I am going to show you this one. Okay, so just have a look at some of these things because it's quite important for you to see. Okay. Don't you love him? I think lots of people love Paulo. Oh, sorry. Now, I just want to show you, what Paulo was like, and also, the thing, his philosophy and theories actually has the influence so many people's thinking, writing, and nowadays people still talk about him in a way that it has changed their life. So like Henry, I think he said that after he read the Pedagogy of the Oppressed, it changed his life and about how he thinks about the world, and I think that it's still happening nowadays. Okay, so I thought it's a good one for you to look at. So all right, now let's just move on. So as I said, I show you this, and you can have a look at that, but I won't show that. All right, now Paulo Freire talk about things that you have seen, have heard. Okay, then of course there will be some sort of critiques about what he has written. Of course, Paulo was a man, okay, and he was talking about mainly about men issue, that sort of thing. In his very early writing, he did not mention anything about women and things like that. So we started to see some feminist researchers who use PAR and start thinking about how to bring women into the theories. So I'm going to touch on this a little bit. Okay, so as I said, they have now an immersion of feminist writer using PAR. So mainly what feminist writer will say or critique about is that, in Paulo thing, he talk about poor, okay, poor people, he talk about marginalized people, he talk about oppressed people. So feminist researchers question that. Who are the poor? Who are the marginalized? Who are the oppressed that we use in PAR? Who are we talking about? Are there many types of poor people? Are there many types of marginalized people or oppressed people? Yeah, who are we talking about that? Who are talking about when we talk about this terminology? And that would be the beginning of the feminist argument about this. And feminist writers say this. There is a danger in the use of category like the oppressed, the marginalized, that sort of thing, because then we treat people as homogeneous. That means the poor are the same. Doesn't matter if they're poor men or poor women, okay? Or they are the marginalized homeless, or they are the marginalized the sex worker. Are they the same? That sort of thing, because once we group people like that, then we make people homogeneous. But we know that people are so different, and that's what feminist writers argue about. Of course, the PAR methodology aims to empower the poor, the marginalized, oppressed, that sort of thing, in order to control their life. Feminist researchers ask, who are these people? So, okay, that's what we can see that another theoretical perspectives come in. So feminist writers are question things like that, and they say that when we talk about the PAR, there are a few points of concern. So I highlight a few things here. So who is given a voice in a PAR project? So they ask that one question. So that is who are included as participants and whose ideas are represented in the results. So there's only men or women or different group, that sort of thing. In the past, most of these projects or PAR projects are represented mainly the voice of men. So they argue that. But what about women? Women are largely excluded from the research, and it's true. If you look at the history of research in the old days, women were not included in any piece of research, and they did have some reason for that. But anyway, come back to this feminist PAR, then they question that, why women are excluded from that. Then the second one that they critique or the concern is that the use of category like the poor, the marginalized, oppressed, that used by Paulo raises question about the development of the theory in practice, because as a male, okay, particularly in his early writing, Paulo failed to address differences between and among groups of oppressed people. So when he talked about the example in his study, that sort of thing, he talked about bosses, okay, oppressing workers, and men oppressing other men, no women. But in his later talk or writing, he did actually address things like that. Okay, that Freire actually, Paulo actually acknowledged the critique of his work by feminist writer, that of course, he failed to mention or include women in there. All right, now the third point of concern by feminist writer is the meaning of being a woman differs depending on place, situation, and time. So even feminist writers say that Paulo only talk about men, that sort of thing. What about women? Now they also say that, and we know that this is the feminist study theory is about, that women are also different. It doesn't mean that I am the same as everyone else, that sort of thing. Being born in Thailand, coming from a very, very poor families, but had the opportunity to study until I got a PhD, that sort of thing. I would be different from others, women in Thailand, that sort of thing. So feminist writer will talk about that. So in a way, ethnicities, social class, age, that sort of thing influence the experience of being a woman, and we know that. Yeah, most of us know that. So the use of women as a unified group is also problematic because women are different, and we need to talk about which group of women, who are the women that we talk about. And so with the development of feminist theory, then we have the seen PAR project, okay, that talk about the differences among the women and differences between women and men. So we have seen now many projects that talk about this. And the one that we tend to use by using the feminist critique or theory in our PAR project, people tend to use the theory called intersectionality theory, that talk about differences between women depending on social class, time, and so on. So that would be the influence of feminist writers. And certainly among the research project, qualitative research in particular, and also in PAR. So we have seen, like a feminist perspective in PAR project. So there are a few examples in the research. The person that talk a lot about this, and many of us would know that. Okay, Charlene Nagy-Hesibibers, she's American, and she has written a few things about feminist research. She has written a few books like that. But these are the video that she talk about feminism. That is the first part, and that is the second part. I won't show this. I just want you to watch that. She was talking with the Patrick Bringhu from SPH about feminist and feminist standpoint in research. So if you get time, just look at that, what feminist research is about. Okay, so I won't show that, but I just want to say that also, although we refer to Paulo's original work in PAR, but now we have seen some other thing, and feminist standpoint is one. So that's another thing that help us to think about things. Now, from now on is the theory that not many people talk about, but to me, I think they are closely related to PAR. So I'm going to propose or talk about that today. Now, this one is called extended epistemology and PAR. The extended epistemology, actually the theory, it was theorized by Heron and Reason, and you can see that the year that they proposed that. And this extended epistemology include a few things: experiential, presentational, propositional, and practical knowing. Okay, and this extended epistemology, sometimes people refer to as critical subjectivity. Now, in the Heron and Reason original writing, they talk about action research, and they talk about these four knowing that we can use when we talk about the action research. And so I think that is, actually really relevant to PAR, so I include that in my writing as well. So in my book on PAR, I actually proposed one of these as well. All right, now just go through a little bit about this extended epistemology here. So in PAR, and as in our everyday life, we people, people use these four forms of knowing and implicitly engage them in different ways. So these four forms, the experiential, presentational, propositional, and practical knowing, we all use that in our everyday life, but maybe differently between people. Now, experiential knowing is the foundational form of knowing. That means we learn or we realize through our experience. Okay, so there's a few examples here. Okay, I just use the extreme one. Okay, giving birth. Now, if you have not given birth, you would not know what it is like to give birth to a child. Any one of you here have given birth? Yeah. Okay, the rest of you would not know. Tell me, Alicia, how do you feel when the baby is out? And before, and as soon as the baby is out? How do you feel? Pain. But then as soon as the baby is out, what happened?
Happiness.
Yeah. Okay. What, we want to share that?
Yeah, it's a feeling of like being a motherhood. You're coming to a motherhood land.
Yeah. Now I want to tell you my experience. Okay, my firstborn baby. Oh, it was so painful. It was so painful. And when the midwife said push, I pushed, And she said, no, stop, don't push. I said, but I want to push, That sort of experience that you never experience through other things. And pain, like Alicia said, oh, so painful. But as soon as the baby is out, that feeling I can't explain to anyone. I can't. It's like relief, it's like happiness, it's like all the pain suddenly disappeared. I can't explain to people. And therefore, those of you who have not given birth, you would not know what I have been through. Only those of you who have given birth probably know what I mean here. It's really difficult to explain. Okay? And that what this theory thing is only through experience that, we come to this knowing. Okay? So the knowledge of giving birth, only those of you who have given birth would know. Or those who don't, then you don't know. So that example I give you. So experiential knowing is the foundation form of knowing. And we cultivate our knowing through our direct experiences. Yeah, so the example I show you that. So in the case of PAR, is it through participation in a PAR project? So come back to this, the theory now. So in the case of PAR, if you don't participate or never participate in a PAR project, then you don't know, how to cultivate knowledge. You don't know how to do things. So here, it's only through the experience of participate in PAR, then we learn. Now then, we or individual voice our experience knowing through expressive imageries like stories, arts, or performances, and that this, the way that we express, we call presentational knowing. We express that to other people through our writing, to our dance, to our performance. So it's the presentational knowing. Then we make sense of our experiences through propositions that are meaningful to us. And here it's like a theory, developing our own theory. So propositional knowing. Okay, so we make sense of that. So we make theories about our experience. Propositional knowing refers to knowing in conceptual terms that something is in the case, and knowledge by description of some energy, entity, person, blah, 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 that sort of thing as things. So that is the propositional knowing. Then we cultivate practical knowing, and here competence or skill, and use it to our action in our life to find that they are capable of changing our situation to the better. So practical knowing that we learn from experiential knowing, presentational and propositional lead to our practical knowing that we can change our life. So the theory of this extended epistemology fit neatly within the PAR philosophy. But it's the different way that we express things. So, but many people actually use this theory as the framework for their PAR project. So, it's just a little bit of abstract thing, but as you can see, some of the example in here just, like apply to our everyday life as well. Okay, so that the theories, these four forms of knowing actually are the essential basis of PAR. Okay, now I'm going to bring back to PAR here. People, anyone, okay, are able to change our life or their life's reality, their lived reality, if they actively participate in a research project. So here we talk about the PAR project. They are able to change their lived reality if they participate in that. Through active participation, they will cultivate the four forms of knowing, which would actually lead to empowerment and capability to alter their marginal life lived reality. So by participate in a PAR project, they cultivate the four forms of knowledge that we talked about in the last slide. And these four forms of knowledge will allow them to be able to change their life, their marginal life or lived reality. Propositional knowledge or a formal theory that they have developed, when we talk about in Western epistemology, in research, that sort of thing, when we talk about research, sorry, I'll just go back to that. When we talk about research, most often in Western positivist science or in quantitative research, that sort of thing, is the propositional knowledge would be a formal theory, would be the thing that dominate Western quantitative research. And you see that in most quantitative research, people or participants are treated as subject of research, and the research is not grounded in subjective, experiential, and practical knowledge. So in most quantitative research, they don't talk about this sort of experiential thing, about practical knowledge and that sort of thing. And people argue that by treat people as the object of research, that sort of thing, then it has alienated many people, or in the way that they oppress people more in that sense. But on the contrary, PAR, okay, actually they acknowledge people experiential knowledge, practical knowledge, and the propositional knowledge that people have cultivated or developed, and people co-construct the knowledge, and from there, actually they lead to the improve of their situation. So by cultivating the extended epistemology of four forms of knowledge, it helps people to change their life to the better. So can see that it situated within the PAR theory very easily. Okay, so that the extended epistemology. theory. All right, that's it, enough for that one. Now, I'm going to propose the new one. It's called healing methodology. Now, this one, I use that in my book on performing quality cross-cultural research, and I actually gave the keynote about this thing in Canada a few years ago, and people love it. And I think that it's actually so good for PAR research. So that is the thing that I propose. So what does healing methodology? What is healing methodology here? All right, we're going to spend a few slides on this thing. Okay, when we talk about healing methodology, it wasn't originally for PAR at all, but I adopt that. Healing methodology is an essential ethics and methodology for working with Indigenous and African women. So the person who wrote about this is here, Cynthia Dillard, who wrote about this, and she is a black, African American woman. Okay, so she talked about research and black women. So she talked about this healing methodology, the way that we do research with black women. And so here, healing methodology is a form of struggle against domination. So here we come back to these oppressed people again, people who are oppressed, people who are dominated by the social structure and so on. It involves action. Okay, so that means researcher must engage and change situation that they encounter in their research endeavors. So that means that when we do research, we encounter certain things, we have to change that. So the essence of this methodology is spirituality and transformation. So there's a few things in there that sit within this. Okay, so we have to transform, but in there it involves spirituality. Sorry. All right. So what this methodology works for, okay, it works to counteract the negative attitudes of many African Americans toward research that was due to abusive hegemonic structure that have characterized the methodology and practice of research in the Western academy. So which I did talk about that, like academic research in the Western academy would be mainly positivist science or quantitative research, heavily influenced by statistics and so on. So because of that, then certain group of people are excluded, and certainly the oppressed group, marginalized group would not be able to take part in the research, so they ignore this group of people, and healing methodology works to counteract that. Okay, but the original idea comes from African American women who have been excluded in the research, and there are many reasons for the exclusion, which I won't be able to talk too much about that. Okay, now healing methodology embraces or comprise a few things. And remember, I said to you in the first slide that remember the word love. Okay, love, L-O-V-E. And you see in the videos, both the first one and the second one, that Paulo Freire also talk about that. So the four things within the healing methodology is this: unconditional love, compassion, reciprocity, ritual, and gratitude. So according to Cynthia Dillard, she refers to these principles as methodologies of the spirit. That's why you see the word spirituality and transformation in the last slide there. So if you bring these four forms into your research, then it is the methodology of the spirits. What these four things here, okay, four, okay, that sort of thing, the component, is they are proposed as a way to honor Indigenous African cultural and knowledge production, and as activist practice designed to acknowledge and embrace spirituality in the process of all of us becoming more fully human in and through the process of research. See that? We have to become a more human being by doing this in our research. So that's what Dillas proposes. Now, in a way, she got 4 things, but to me, I think the first 3 principles are actually relevant to cross-cultural research and PAR in particular that involves indigenous and marginalized ethnic community. But you also can apply to other groups. But to me, I think the unconditional love, compassion, and reciprocity are actually the essential when we work with the really most oppressive group of people. That means indigenous people and some ethnic community like the Roma in Europe nowadays. They are so oppressed. Have you read anything about Roma people? I just can't believe it, the way they are treated by others. Yeah, and Cynthia Dillas talk about that when we do research, that's what we have to have if we work with these people. Okay, right? Okay, now love, the first one. Okay, I'm not talking about love between boyfriend and girlfriend and things like that here. It's about the thing that, we think about other human being. So love is the first principle of this healing methodology. Okay, often, when we do research, we don't really think about love, but love actually is the wisdom. Okay, we don't think that way. When we talk about the more just society, or if we talk about just size of inquiry, we have to have love. We have to love people. We have to go into the community or to local people with our love. Okay, we really have to love people. That's why we go in and do this research. So love as a knowledge will allow the practice of looking and listening deeply. With our love toward local people, we will listen carefully about their problem, their concern. What are the issues here? Why they're so poor, that sort of thing. Okay, with our wholehearted love, then we will understand more. So we will know what to do and what not to do in order to serve people in the process of our research. See this? Know what to do and what not to do. What to do mean that, what can we do in order to help them? But there are certain things that we're not supposed to do in order to respect them, in order to, respect the culture and so on. We also need to know things like that. Now with our love, that when we learn things like that. Okay, so love here includes carefully seeking understanding of the needs, aspiration, and suffering of the ones that you love. So the ones you love here mean your research participants. You need to know about their need, their aspiration, and also their suffering. So by deeply understanding those people, that sort of thing, that we engage in our research, then it is a necessary requirement for qualitative work in the spirit or the methodology of the spirit that Cynthia Dillas talked about, that I present in the last slides. So the first, very, very first principle of healing methodology is love. We have to have love in the people. And you have heard this in the slides too. So remember that, okay? So that don't just go, when you do PAR, don't go into the community with the idea that I'm going to get my PhD finished and then that off, that sort of thing. No, okay? You need to have your real commitment about the life of those people and how you can do in order to change their life. So love is the first principle. Okay, the second one is the compassion. Okay, we have to embrace that. Okay, so when we talk about compassion, it's about this: the intention and capacity to relieve and transform suffering through our research work. So here, okay, relieve and transform suffering. So if they don't have enough fresh water, if they don't have enough food to eat, that sort of thing, through our research work, what can we do in order to help them to have more food to eat, to have more fresh water to use? So we need to get to that. That's why we have to have the action when we talk about PAR. It requires us to relieve community of their suffering through the process of activist research. So here, by having them participate in the research, by having some action to change the life, that's what we mean by the process of activist research. If they are oppressed a lot, then what can we do in order to help them to be less oppressed or something like that? So it has to have that. So it means that we must have serious and ongoing concerns for the participants, and we want to bring benefit to them through our research. So this is the principle of PAR that I talked about at the beginning. Yeah, so we need to do something about it to bring benefits and so to change their life. So as researcher within the compassion, we must be culturally and historically knowledgeable about and aware of suffering, but retain our clarity, calmness, our voice, and our strength so that we can, through our practice, help to transform the situation and ourselves. So not only the participant, but ourselves as well. So that's another abstract thing about healing methodology. Not only you have to love people, you have to have the compassion as well. Okay, so that's the second component. The last one, reciprocity. Seeking reciprocity here, it means that when we do PAR research, normally as a researcher, okay, we go in, we collect the data, we write the paper, we get promotion, or we get a PhD, okay? But do we do anything in return to help those people? Do we give back anything to the participant? In normal research, we don't think that way, okay? We don't actually do. We say we understand people more, so we write up about them. But in PAR, we have to get beyond that. Okay, we need to give something back to the participant, and here, that's what I mean by reciprocity here, that we need to give something back, and through PAR, that's what it means, that we get to in the intervention, we get to some program, we get to, I don't know, something that we eventually do to help those people, and that is the reciprocity. So the other thing is that to make people feel that they own the research. Okay, so that's why they become co-researcher, they become co-writer, that the empowerment, the emancipation empowerment that we create through PAR research is part of this reciprocity. So is it weird to hear things like this? That I can tell you that not many people think this way, and that's why it challenges so many people, particularly positivist scientists, that they say just rubbish, just bullshit, you know. When we talk about love and, compassion and things like that, they think it's not peer research, okay. So anyway, that's what we have. We want to use PAR. Okay, now, right. Now when we talk about this healing methodology, when we talk about the important component, love, compassion, and reciprocity, it allows us to see those that we do research as human beings, okay? And this, okay, will have a profound impact on our ways of performing our research. When we see our participant as human being, the way that we do research will be different from when we don't see them that way. Now, although, as I said before, that the way that we do research may not be seen as a rigorous research, a form of research, and therefore that sort of thing is not, peer research, because we talk about feelings here. It's about feelings. And of course, in positivist science, no feelings, okay, no bias, but we do have feelings. And that's part of feminist methodology too, that we do research with feelings. We feel for our participant, so it's really important if we want to use it for PAR. And this actually certainly good for culturally sensitive research that we work, when we do research with indigenous and minority group, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's another ways of how we think about research. Okay, so that's the healing methodology. Okay, that the last one now that they want to bring up is the decolonizing methodology, or the Kaupapa Maori research that I mentioned early on. Okay, now you probably have seen some of these things, because when people talk about colonization that happened They here mean they are mainly Western people. And here, if we talk about colonization, we meant the English, the British, okay? They came, they saw what we have, they name it, according to what they think, and then they claim. So this word actually came from Linda Smith's writing, the book on decolonizing methodology. She used that. Okay, according to Smith, she said, research that we do, okay, has been seen this a colonizing construct, okay, and it is a legacy that Smith actually say that exactly. They came, they saw, they name, and they claim. So she said that the most research, particularly Western positivist science, would be that it's just a colonizing construct. What she meant here, just talk a little bit about colonization or colonizing. Here, talk about a process where a foreign settler creates a new colony in a new land, and over time takes away the livelihood and suppresses the identities of many native people. So you can imagine Australia is one, New Zealand one, the US actually another one, Canada too, safe? Yeah, all right, because you still belong to the Commonwealth. Yes, okay, and African countries, Asia, everywhere in the world. Like in the old day, we can talk about, the British colonizer. Who else? Spanish, yeah? The Portuguese. Who else that went around the world in order to colonize people? Take away, I think, the main. French, yeah, okay. Yeah, they went everywhere in the world and they claim everything, So anyway, that's the colonization. Through the colonizing process, it has resulted in this, a loss of culture and the ways of life of people. Okay? And this loss of culture and ways of life impact on people's health and well-being of local people. Like, I give you the example of Australia. You may know that, like the Captain Cook landed in Australia, and after that, lots of white people settled, and you know what they did? They started killing indigenous people. And the colonizing process continued in a way that they want to eradicate black people or indigenous people in Australia. They got to the point that they said that will be no indigenous people left in Australia. But no, it did not happen, okay? Fortunately, I have to say that. But they killed a lot of people in order to claim everything, claim their land and that. And other parts of the world the same. So just talk about Australia here. So by doing this, then of course the health and well-being of local people are affected. Nowadays, indigenous people in Australia, the life expectancy is a lot shorter than the rest of the population. They always have worse health outcomes. Lots of them ended up in jails. So death in custody, that means death in jails, mainly happen to indigenous young men. And their health are so bad even nowadays. Okay, this is 2019. So that's what Smith talked about here. So Smith suggests that in the process of colonization, something gets lost. And this something lost here mean indigenous knowledge and culture. So lots of things disappear. Their knowledge, their cultures would not be seen as important, and they try to eradicate these sort of things. So that's what we see through the process of colonization. So that the colonization, but Smith said that Western research is just like that. It's just like the colonization of knowledge too. That's what she said. So now, therefore, she proposed decolonizing methodology here. This methodology is guided by the values, the knowledge, and research of indigenous people. So the methodology can actually begin to address the suspicion and harm that researcher has created in indigenous community. quite often what I'm here say is that quite often researchers go into the indigenous community, maybe conducted some surveys or something like that, and then that's it, disappear. And they tend, okay, to represent indigenous people as dirty, unhealthy, lazy, what else? I don't know, because they compare to white people. Of course, you know, when you compare with the better off group, indigenous people would be worse off, and therefore they are victimized in that sense. So by using this methodology, then we can eradicate things like that. So and also because of the past abusive thing that happened in research, indigenous people do not trust any researcher. Even nowadays, okay, most people, if you're not an indigenous person, you can't really do research with indigenous people because they don't trust you. Unless you created a lot of trust, you go into the community, even you are an Asian or you are a white person, you can, but you have to create a lot of trust with them before you can do. And that not only just in Australia, in any part of the world too. So this methodology will change the research practice that have damaged indigenous people in the past. So it will empower indigenous community and respect their culture and tradition. So you can see that again is PAR methodology. Yeah, it's about respect local people and also empower indigenous people or local community. So that PAR methodology too. So that this methodology. So when we talk about PAR as the decolonizing methodology, the important thing is this, the one that I mentioned in the first lecture, community-based participatory action research, CBPR. So that is the framework, that is the method that sits neatly within this methodology. And I think I don't need to talk too much about the rest now because it's the same as what I said early on, that it makes people empower and more emancipate and that sort of thing, and is actually change people. So community-based participatory is the one that we use a lot in this within this methodology. Okay. Now, within the decolonizing methodology, we talk a little bit about collaborative methodology. So virtually quickly too is that we have to collaborate with local people. And here, if we talk about indigenous people, we have to collaborate with indigenous community. We have to get indigenous people involved in our research. Quite often is the leader of the community, that sort of thing. But it can apply to other work, not only just indigenous people, like say ethnic community. Okay, so when you do that, you have to involve maybe a person from or a few people from ethnic community, like community leaders, something like that. So collaborative methodology that we work closely with people. So that again within PAR, and that within the decolonizing methodology. Okay, I also include this YouTube, but you watch it on your when you have time. Okay, just the here in this video is Sean Wilson and Monica Moore-Rennan talk about the importance of decolonizing methodology, and both of them actually are Maoris researcher. So you can see, and this book here is the book that I use for this one, is written by Linda Smith. Okay, so it is a very good book. The same as Pedagogy of the Oppressed. When you read that, it changes your life. When you read this book, it changes your life too. Okay, so just read that if you get the chance to do it. Okay, right, now I won't show the slide because I think that we have had enough of that. So in closing this section, I just quote one person here. Okay, we all have the power to listen to voices which are seldom heard, if we choose to make the time to learn, to listen, and to struggle with the pain and frustration that disempowered people feel. We will see now new visions, feel new energy, and find hope in our future. Do you feel that? I certainly feel that. Okay, so take time to listen to people. Take time to learn about their struggles. Take time to learn about what they really need in order to improve their life. And of course, it doesn't only change their life, it's changed our life. I can tell you, when you do one piece of PAR, you feel that way. So good luck, everyone. All right, so that's it for the theory, okay? So sort of a little bit, I don't know, sort of like make you feel depressed sometimes when you hear things like this. But, it's very important for you to know the philosophical foundation behind our PAR project. But you can see that all of them that I proposed today is about, working with local people, working with our research participants, and you have to love them, you have to work with them. Yeah? Any questions, any comments?